So what does it mean if you have false information on your credit report?
Well, under the Fair Credit Reporting Act, information has to be both accurate and complete. So it also applies to misleading information. So, a good example I give somebody, and this is a real life case, where a mortgage company told the borrower to skip his payment, and then they reported him late anyways. And so their argument was, well, it's technically true that you're late under the promissory note, but it's still misleading to report him as late if you told him to skip it. So it basically applies to both false information or information that's technically true but misleading.
Wow. So what does someone do when there's false information on their credit report?
Well, you should dispute it with the credit bureaus, send them all the relevant documents that you can, and then they'll send it to the furnisher normally, and then hopefully they'll get it fixed. And if they don't fix it, then you can file a lawsuit.
Wow. So is it possible for your identity to be stolen and you not know it?
Yeah, that happens all the time. We get lots of people whose identities are stolen, and they find out months or years later when they're being sued for a debt they have no idea what it's for, or they go apply for a mortgage and they get turned down based on some collection account that they have no idea what it's for. So yeah, that happens all the time.
Wow. Can you prevent yourself from getting your identity stolen?
Not entirely. I mean, there's certain things you can do that would minimize the risk. Like you could put a freeze on your credit reports, or you could put a statement on there that any creditors have to call your cell phone before they can extend credit. But the creditors don't always follow that anyway. So, but I mean, things like that will help in constantly checking and monitoring it. But I don't think there's anything you can do that'll totally prevent it from happening.
All right. So what issues can come up if you freeze your credit, but you need to access your credit?
Well, on one hand, it can help protect you from being an identity theft victim, but it also makes it harder to get credit because there's more hoops to jump through. So if you're, applying for a credit card at a store and they're trying to call your cell phone, or they call the wrong number and they can't get a hold of you, then they'll automatically deny it. So it just makes it more burdensome to go through the credit application process.
So is it worth freezing your credit to protect yourself?
In my opinion, not really, because you're still protected anyways. But some people, I guess it just depends on how much you care about whether your identity would be stolen. I guess for me, it's different because as the attorney that files these cases, I know it'll work out in the long run. So I'm not as worried about it as maybe somebody who doesn't experience it on a daily basis.
Gotcha. So what should you do if a debt collector is trying to sue you?
Well, if it's for a debt that you actually do owe, what I would recommend is trying to reach out to that collection agency or their attorneys and trying to set up a payment plan, which most of them will do. And you might as well try to negotiate something you can afford, because if you actually do owe it, they'll just garnish your wages if they win, which they probably will. If you don't owe it, then you should definitely try to find a lawyer like myself that specializes in consumer law and who can file counterclaims and litigate the case.
Nice. So what's something that most people don't know about consumer law?
Probably just how broad it is and how many different areas there are. I mean, there's false credit reporting, there's debt collections, there's car dealership fraud, lemon laws, credit discrimination. I have probably 50 books in my office that are only about consumer law, and each one is like an inch thick of a separate subpart of consumer law. So it's a very specialized area that even consumer law lawyers, most of them specialize in a specific subset of consumer law.
Wow. And so we only really do a subset of consumer law. What kind of consumer law do we practice?
So we do false credit reporting cases, identity theft cases, bad faith insurance, and then foreclosure rescue scams. It's pretty much most of what we do.
Mm-hmm. What's a foreclosure rescue scam?
Basically, it's these guys, they find people that are in foreclosure that have equity in their house. Usually they're vulnerable for some reason, so they may be elderly or have mental health problems or drug or alcohol abuse, or for whatever reason they're not responding to the foreclosure. They go knock on their door, tell them that they can help them save their house and that they'll loan them money, like say 30, 40,000 to get them out of the foreclosure. They'll go to their house every day, hang out with them for hours every day, build up the trust. And then the night before the foreclosure sale, they'll trick them into signing documents saying they're selling their house for 30,000, and then they'll evict them and throw them out on the streets and try to steal the house.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's very prevalent. It goes on
How often does this happen to people?
every day. I mean, there's thousands of these in Colorado.
Oh my gosh. So moving on to another question. You mentioned lemon law. I've heard of lemon law, but what is lemon law?
Well, lemon law, it basically applies to new vehicles normally. I mean, every state has their own lemon law and every state has a little bit different requirements, but it applies to new vehicles, and it has to be defective. It has to be a major defect that affects the value of the car. You have to give them a few chances to fix it, and then if they don't fix it, then you can sue them and get your money back. There's also a federal statute called the Magnuson-Moss Act, which is more broad, covers any consumer product over $20. If it doesn't work properly and they don't fix it after you give them a chance, you can sue for damages, basically.
Okay. And so we recently just heard of the Tesla trucks having defects. Would the lemon law be applicable to this situation with the Tesla trucks?
Yes. So if they were new and the failure was within the first year, yes. The Magnuson-Moss Act would also apply if it was still under manufacturer's warranty. So even if you were in year 3 or 4, if you still fall under the manufacturer's warranty, then yes.
Okay. Interesting. And so if someone gets in a car crash and they go to a body shop to get their car repaired, and this body shop is the insurance's preferred body shop, what happens if they don't repair the car properly?
Well, then you can take it to an independent repair shop to do a post-repair inspection, and they can point out all of the different unrepaired damages or improper repairs. You can resubmit that to the insurance company, and if they don't make it right, then you can sue them.
Wow. So should you go to a preferred body shop, or should you go to an independent body shop whenever you get in a wreck?
Well, in my opinion, I would always go to an independent body shop, because the preferred shops for the insurance companies, they basically do what the insurance company wants them to do. So they cut corners, they use aftermarket parts, they go off the insurance company's estimate. A lot of times they're doing really bad repairs. We've seen lots of unsafe repairs. So I would always go to an independent shop.
Okay. Why do insurance companies lowball people for their car repairs?
It's all about the money, saving money and making more profits. That's what they're all about.
Wow. That's pretty wrong. If you think about it, I wouldn't want to work for an insurance company.
Yeah, well, they're all about, making profits for their executives and shareholders, and the way to do that is reduce the amount you pay out.
Wow. That's horrible.
Yeah.
So what is bad faith insurance?
It can encompass a lot of different things, but the most common things that I see are not investigating claims properly, not considering the information that the customer provides, and just kind of, artificially lowballing the estimates, or, disagreeing with the shops or the contractors if it's a home, and trying to narrow the scope of repairs to do it as cheaply as possible. But basically any conduct where they treat you unfairly in the process of denying your claim in whole or in part. Another common one we see is denying claims, but then not explaining why it's being denied, or not explaining what part of the policy supports the denial. Or just taking a long time to pay can be another type of delay. I mean, we've had car cases where the insurance company should have paid in 30 days and it's taken them 15 months. And the person's sitting there they can't drive their car and they're still making payments on a car and insurance payments on a car they can't use,
Wow. That's horrible. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, this is my last question. But what tips could you give someone that's trying to protect themselves from fraud?
Well, the biggest thing that I would do is I would constantly monitor your bank statements and your credit card statements. Look for things that are unfamiliar. Monitor your credit reports a few times a year. Look for addresses you don't recognize, phone numbers you don't recognize, people pulling your credit report that you don't know what they are, or just accounts on your report in general that you don't know. Those are all telltale signs of fraud.
Mm-hmm. And if you see something incorrect on your credit report or your bank statement, what should you do?
If it's on your credit report, you should dispute it with the credit bureaus. If it's on your bank statement, then report it to your bank and then, fill out whatever documents they ask you to and go through their internal fraud dispute process.
Nice. So then who do you listen to? Who's your favorite artist?
It depends what mood I'm in, but if I'm going to trial, I usually listen to rap or heavy metal. If I'm just my everyday chilling life, either classic rock or country.
Okay. So what, if you were going to trial right now, what song are you hitting on your iPhone?
Ooh, let's see. I'll probably do either Rage Against the Machine or Dr. Dre.
Okay. That actually really surprised me. I was not expecting that. Okay, this is another one. If you could only have rice or pasta for the rest of your life, what would you choose? You can eat it with anything, right? If it's a pasta, you can have different variations of pasta. If it's a rice, you can have different types of food on it. But if you could only choose one of those, what would it be?
Oh, that's tough. I'd go with rice, probably.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so much you can do and so many different types of food. Because I'm half Persian, so I grew up with rice. So I would do all the Persian food. And my husband, he's part Korean, and so he does the Korean food with rice. But pasta is just so narrow, I think. You can only have pasta salad and Italian food. I love Italian food, but I think there's so much more versatility with rice.
Right.
Yeah.
I've kind of, my wife is half Cambodian, so she eats rice with almost every meal. So I've sort of gotten used to eating a lot more rice since I got married. And I would go with that personally.
Yeah,
so.
Rice. So is she an attorney?
She is, yeah. Well, right now she's not working, but she was a bankruptcy attorney. She used to work with me at my old firm.
Oh, really?
But yeah, she was doing bankruptcies.
That seems tough, bankruptcy.
Yeah, it's sad. There's you hear a lot of sad stories of people just losing all their money, and when they call you, they're in the worst part of their life, or one of them.
Wow. But I don't know. I feel like I always hear of they went bankrupt, but some people come back from it. So it seems like there's success stories, but. Oh yeah, definitely. A
lot of people just need that discharge to get a fresh start, and then they can come back from it. But we saw people that came back for another case even a few years later. So you see some people that bad things just continuously happen to them. So
oh my gosh, I feel like I wouldn't. It's good to know lawyers, but I wouldn't want to be involved if I don't need to be involved with a lawyer. So I'm going to try not to put myself in a position to need a lawyer, right?
Right.
But yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
That's crazy.